Hong Kong, Kowloon District, Nathan Road, between Temple Street and Jordan Road. August 1972. Tuesday afternoon, 4:47 p.m. A boy was kicking a telephone pole, barefoot, over and over. Same spot, same height, same leg. The wood was scarred from weeks of contact. A pale oval worn smooth in the dark surface about 3 feet off the ground. The boy's shin was worse, bleeding in 2 places, swollen from the ankle to the knee. He didn't stop. He set his jaw, pulled his leg back, and drove it into the pole again. The sound was flat and wet, wood against bone against skin that had stopped protecting anything. The boy weighed maybe 60 pounds. He was somewhere between 8 and 11 years old. Hard to tell because malnutrition does that. It freezes children between ages, makes them look younger and older simultaneously. His shirt was 3 sizes too big, hanging off one shoulder. His shorts were held up with a piece of electrical wire twisted into a belt. His ribs were visible when the shirt shifted. He was training, not playing, not imitating something he'd seen on television. Training. There was a difference, and the man who had just stopped on the sidewalk 15 feet away could see it immediately. The boy's stance was wrong. His hip rotation was off. His guard hand was dropping between kicks. But the intent was right. The focus. The willingness to hurt himself in pursuit of something he couldn't yet name but refused to stop chasing. The man watched for approximately 90 seconds without moving. Hands in pockets. Sunglasses on. A plain dark shirt and light trousers. Nothing that drew attention. He was 5'7", 140 pounds, with forearms that looked like they'd been carved from hardwood, and a stillness about him that made the crowd flow around him like water around a stone. Nobody on the sidewalk recognized him. He was wearing the sunglasses specifically so they wouldn't. His name was Bruce Lee. He was 31 years old. He was the biggest movie star in Asia. And he was watching a starving child kick a telephone pole with a technique so raw and unrefined that it would destroy the boy's leg within a month, and a determination so ferocious that it reminded Bruce of exactly one person. Himself. 20 years ago. On this same street. Now get this. What happened in the next 3 hours is something that Bruce Lee never talked about in interviews, never mentioned to journalists, never turned into a story for the cameras. The only reason anyone knows about it is because the boy grew up and 47 years later, he told the story himself. And believe me, when you hear what Bruce Lee did for this kid, you'll understand why the boy waited nearly 50 years to tell it. Some gifts are so big that it takes a lifetime to understand what they meant. Stay with me on this one. Nathan Road in 1972 was the main artery of Kowloon. Neon signs stacked 6 high on buildings. Street vendors selling roasted chestnuts and fish balls from carts. Double-decker buses grinding through traffic. Tailors calling out from open doorways offering suits in 24 hours. The sidewalks were packed shoulder to shoulder, a river of people moving in both directions with the practiced efficiency of a population that had learned to navigate density the way fish navigate currents. Nobody was paying attention to the boy kicking the pole. Street children were invisible in Kowloon in 1972. There were thousands of them. Kids who slept in stairwells and ate from garbage bins behind restaurants and survived by being small enough to ignore. The city moved around them the way the city moved around everything inconvenient, with speed and indifference. The boy's name was Kwang Yaoman, but everyone called him Monkey because he was small and fast and could climb anything. He lived in a stairwell on Temple Street with his grandmother, who sold paper offerings for funerals from a cloth laid on the sidewalk. She made approximately 12 Hong Kong dollars a day. Enough for rice, sometimes vegetables, never meat, never enough. Monkey had been training himself for 3 months. He'd seen a Bruce Lee film at a street screening, a projector set up against the side of a building in the Yau Ma Tea night market, the audience sitting on overturned crates and plastic stools. The big boss. Monkey had watched it twice that night, standing at the back because the seats were taken, and something in his brain had caught fire. Not the story. Not the acting. The movement. The way Bruce Lee's body did things that shouldn't be possible. The speed. The precision. The way every strike looked like it had been designed by an engineer and delivered by a machine. Monkey wanted that. Not to be famous. Not to be in movies. To be dangerous. Because in Kowloon, if you were small and poor and alone, dangerous was the only thing that kept you alive. The older boys took your food. The market vendors kicked you away from their stalls. The triads recruited children for errands that always ended badly. If you couldn't fight, you couldn't survive. And Monkey intended to survive. So he found a telephone pole on Nathan Road and started kicking it. Every afternoon. For 3 months. No instruction. No technique. No understanding of what he was doing to his body. Just a kid hitting wood with his shin until the shin went numb and then hitting it some more because numb was the same as strong. Right? Wrong. And the man standing 15 feet away knew exactly how wrong it was. Bruce Lee took off his sunglasses. He folded them and put them in his shirt pocket. He walked toward the boy. Monkey heard footsteps approaching and tensed. In his experience, adults who approach street children wanted one of 3 things: labor, theft, or trouble. He turned, his guard coming up instinctively. A clumsy approximation of a fighting stance he'd assembled from fragments of what he'd seen on that screen. The man stopped 6 feet away. He wasn't big. Monkey noticed that first. Most adults who bothered him were bigger. This man was lean, average height, with arms that were ropey with muscle and a face that was calm in a way that street people's faces never were. Street people's faces were always calculating, always watching for the angle. This man's face was just still. "Your hip is wrong," the man said. Cantonese. Clean. Direct. Monkey stared at him. "When you kick," the man continued, "you're using your leg like a bat, swinging it. That's why your shin is bleeding. You need to turn your hip over. The power comes from the rotation, not the swing." "Who are you?" Monkey asked. His voice was thin, defensive, the voice of a child who had learned that free advice from strangers was never free. "Someone who kicked a lot of poles when he was your age." The man stepped forward, not into Monkey space, beside the pole. He stood in a relaxed stance, weight-centered, hands at his sides. Then, without any visible preparation, he pivoted his hip and drove his shin into the telephone pole. The sound was different from Monkey's kicks. Sharper, denser, a crack instead of a thud. The pole vibrated. Monkey could see it vibrate. Flecks of bark fell off at the impact point. The man stepped back. His shin was unmarked. No blood, no swelling. The same leg, the same pole, a completely different result. "See the difference?" The man pointed at his own hip. "The hip turns first. The leg follows. The shin is just the delivery system. The power is generated here." He tapped his hip. "And here." He tapped his core. "Your leg is the last thing that moves, not the first." Monkey looked at the man's shin, then at his own. The contrast was educational in a way that was also humiliating. The man had hit the pole harder and hadn't left a mark on his own body. Monkey had been hitting it softer for 3 months and looked like he'd been in a car accident. "Try it," the man said. Monkey faced the pole, set his stance, started to swing his leg. "Stop." Monkey stopped. "Feet first. Shoulder width. Weight on your back foot. Now turn your hip. Don't kick yet. Just turn." Monkey turned his hip. Felt strange. Mechanical. Wrong. "Good. Now extend. Let the leg follow the hip. Don't push it. Let it go." Monkey let the leg follow. His shin connected with the pole. The sound was different. Not as sharp as the man's strike, but sharper than anything Monkey had produced in 3 months. And it hurt less. Significantly less. The impact distributed across the shin bone instead of concentrating on one point. Again. Monkey kicked again. Better. The hip rotation was starting to make sense. The leg was a whip now, not a bat. The pole took the hit differently. Again, and again, and again. 7 kicks, each one slightly better than the last. Each one revealing something Monkey hadn't understood about his own body. That the leg didn't work alone. That force was generated from the ground up. That technique wasn't about adding something to what he was doing. It was about removing the things that were wasting his energy. After the 7th kick, the man nodded. Not praise. Acknowledgement. The nod of someone who has seen a student understand a concept for the first time and recognizes that the understanding is genuine. "You're fast," the man said. "Faster than most kids your age. That's natural. You can't teach speed. But speed without technique is just moving quickly in the wrong direction." "Where did you learn?" Monkey asked. Something almost like a smile crossed the man's face. "Here, Kowloon. I grew up on these streets. Got into fights every week. Lost most of them until I learned what I'm showing you. If you've been with me this far, hit that subscribe button. Because what this man did next is the part that changed a starving kid's entire life." The man looked at Monkey's shin, at the blood drying on both legs, at the swelling that had been building for weeks. His expression changed. The instructional detachment shifted into something else. Something that looked like recognition. The specific recognition of a person seeing their own past in someone else's present. "When did you last eat?" the man asked. Monkey's guard went up. "Why?" "Because you're shaking. Not from the kicks. From hunger. Your muscles don't have fuel. You can train all day and you'll never get stronger if your body doesn't have material to build with." Monkey didn't answer. The answer was humiliating. He'd eaten a bowl of rice with soy sauce that morning. Before that, half a steamed bun the previous evening. Before that, nothing. The man read the silence. He'd spoken this language before. The silence of a child who has stopped being embarrassed about hunger because hunger has become so constant it's just background noise. Like traffic. "Come with me," the man said. Monkey didn't move. 3 months on the street had hardwired his threat detection. Adults who said, "Come with me," were the beginning of stories that ended badly. "I'm going to buy you dinner," the man said. "At the restaurant on the corner. The one with the roast ducks in the window. You'll sit at a table and eat until you're full and then you'll go home. That's all." "Why?" "Because someone did it for me once. When I was your age. On this street. And if he hadn't, I'd be dead. Or in prison. Or worse." Monkey looked at the restaurant. He could see the roast ducks. Golden brown. Gleaming with glaze. Hanging in a row behind glass. He'd walked past that window every day for 3 months. He knew exactly how they smelled. He knew exactly how much they cost. He knew exactly how far outside his world they were. He went with the man. The restaurant was called Yat Lok. Small. 7 tables. The kind of place where the owner stands behind the counter with a cleaver and a permanent expression of someone who has been cutting roast duck for 30 years and will cut roast duck for 30 more and does not require your opinion about it. The man ordered, in Cantonese so casual and rapid that Monkey almost missed it. Roast duck. Char siu pork. Rice. Bok choy. Soup. He ordered enough food for 4 people and set it all in front of a boy who weighed 60 pounds. Monkey ate. Not the way a child eats at a restaurant. The way a child eats when eating is not a meal but an event. Something that happens rarely enough that the body responds to it with the urgency of an emergency. He ate with both hands. He ate with his face close to the plate. He ate until his stomach, which had been running on empty for so long it had forgotten what full meant, finally sent the signal that it couldn't hold any more. The man watched. He didn't eat. He sat across the table with a cup of tea and watched a hungry child eat the way a mechanic watches an engine receive fuel. Professionally. Noting what was missing and what was needed. When Monkey finally stopped, his eyes were glazed with the specific drowsiness that comes from a body suddenly receiving resources it has been rationing for months. He looked at the man. The gratitude was enormous, but the vocabulary for it was small. "Thank you," Monkey said. "What's your name?" Monkey. Your real name. Kwang Yaoman. Yaoman. Who taught you to fight? Nobody. I taught myself. I watched your movie. The man tilted his head. My movie? The Big Boss. At the night market. You're Bruce Lee. The man was quiet for a moment. He picked up his tea. Set it down without drinking. When did you figure it out? When you kicked the pole. Nobody kicks like that. I've watched the movie 11 times. I know how you move. 11 times? The projector man lets me stand in the back if I don't bother anyone. Bruce Lee looked at this boy, the starving, barefoot, bleeding boy who had watched his movie 11 times from the back of a street screening and then spent 3 months trying to teach himself kung fu by kicking a telephone pole until his legs bled. Who had recognized him not from his face or his fame but from the way he kicked. Your technique is terrible, Bruce said. I know. Your stance is wrong. Your guard drops. You don't use your hips. You hit the pole like you're angry at it instead of like you're training. I know. And you're going to permanently damage your shins if you keep doing what you're doing. The bone will calcify wrong. You'll be limping by the time you're 20. I know. But I don't have a teacher. And I don't have money for a school. And I don't have anywhere else to go. So I kick the pole. Bruce was quiet for a long time. The restaurant noise filled the silence. Chopsticks on ceramic. The cleaver on the cutting board. Traffic outside. The sounds of a city that had too many people and not enough room for all of them. Do you know where the Jun Fan Gung Fu Institute is? Bruce asked. Monkey shook his head. It's my school. On Nathan Road. 17 blocks north of here. It's above a tailor's shop. There's no sign. You have to know where it is. He pulled a napkin from the dispenser. Took a pen from his pocket. Drew a map. Simple lines. Clear directions. The handwriting was small and precise. Be there tomorrow morning at 6. Not 6:15. 6. I train early because nobody bothers me early. If you're late, the door will be locked and I won't open it. Monkey stared at the napkin, at the map, at the man who had drawn it. You want to train me? I want to stop you from destroying your legs. Training you is the side effect. I can't pay. I didn't ask you to pay. Why? Bruce stood up. He set money on the table. Enough for the meal and a tip that made the owner's eyebrows rise slightly. Because I was you, Bruce said. 19 years ago. On this street. Small. Angry. Fighting everyone. Losing. Getting into trouble that was going to get me killed or locked up. And a man named Yip Man looked at me and decided I was worth teaching. Not because I was talented. I wasn't not yet. Because I was willing to bleed for something I didn't understand yet. He tapped the napkin. Tomorrow, 6 a.m. Bring the same stubbornness. Leave the bad technique at the door. He walked out of the restaurant, into the Kowloon crowd, into the neon and the noise and the density that swallowed everyone eventually. Monkey sat at the table holding a napkin with a map drawn on it. The food was settling in his stomach like cement. His shins were throbbing. The owner was watching him, probably waiting for him to leave. But Monkey wasn't leaving. Not yet. He was memorizing the map. Every line, every turn, every landmark. Because this napkin was the most valuable thing he had ever possessed. More valuable than food. More valuable than money. More valuable than the 12 Hong Kong dollars his grandmother earned selling paper offerings for the dead. This napkin was a door, and tomorrow at 6 a.m. he was going to walk through it. He was there at 5:47 a.m. He sat on the staircase outside the tailor's shop in the dark and waited. At 5:58, he heard footsteps on the stairs above him. A light clicked on. A door opened. You're early, Bruce's voice said from above. You said not to be late. I said 6, not 5:47. Early isn't late. There was a pause. Then something that might have been a laugh. Come up. The school was a single room above the tailor's shop. Wooden floor. Mirrors on one wall. A heavy bag. A wooden dummy. No decoration. No trophies. No photographs. Just a room designed for one purpose. Work. Bruce was already changed. Black pants, no shirt, barefoot. In the dim morning light, his body looked like an anatomy chart brought to life. Every muscle visible. Every tendon defined. The body of a man who had spent 20 years engineering himself into something that the human frame wasn't supposed to be able to become. First thing, Bruce said, forget everything you taught yourself. Everything. Everything. Your stance. Your kicks. Your guard. All of it. It's not just wrong. It's dangerous. You've built habits that will hurt you. We need to tear them down before we can build anything useful. Monkey's jaw tightened. 3 months of work. 3 months of bleeding shins and aching bones and training through hunger and exhaustion. And this man was telling him to throw it all away. I know that's hard to hear, Bruce said. He was reading Monkey's face the way he'd read his stance the day before. Instantly. Accurately. You worked hard for what you have. But working hard on the wrong thing doesn't make it right. It just makes you good at being wrong. And believe me, that sentence, working hard on the wrong thing doesn't make it right, is something that Monkey would carry for the rest of his life. He would tell his own students that sentence 30 years later, and they would carry it too. They trained. Every morning at 6 for 3 months. Bruce taught Monkey the basics of Jeet Kune Do. Not forms. Not patterns. Principles. How to generate force from the ground up. How to maintain balance under pressure. How to read an opponent's intention before the movement begins. How to breathe when your body wants to panic. He also fed him. Every morning after training, Bruce took Monkey to the same restaurant and ordered the same amount of food. The owner stopped being surprised after the first week. By the second week, he had Monkey's usual ready before they walked in. Monkey gained weight. His legs healed. His shins, treated by a physician Bruce sent him to, recovered properly without the calcification that would have crippled him. His grandmother received an envelope of money every week, delivered by a man she never met, containing enough to cover rent and food with some left over. She didn't know where it came from. Monkey didn't tell her. Bruce never talked about it. Never announced it. Never brought a camera crew to film the heartwarming story of a movie star helping a street kid. He simply showed up at 6 a.m., unlocked the door, and taught a boy to fight the way someone had once taught him. 3 months. That was all the time they had. In October 1972, Bruce became consumed by the production of Enter the Dragon, the film that would make him a global icon. His schedule collapsed into 18-hour days. The morning sessions became less frequent, then sporadic, then stopped. The last session was a Thursday in late October. Bruce was distracted. Monkey could feel it. The energy was different. The focus was split. Bruce was already somewhere else on a set, in a production meeting, in the future that was pulling him away from this room above a tailor's shop. After training, they sat on the floor. Bruce handed Monkey a glass of water. I have to go to work, Bruce said. The film. It's going to take all my time for a while. Monkey nodded. He'd known it was coming. Good things didn't last on Nathan Road. That was one of the first lessons the street taught you. Keep training, Bruce said. Every day. What I've shown you is a foundation. Build on it. Don't go back to kicking poles. I won't. And eat. Every day. Your body is a machine. You don't run a machine without fuel and expect it to perform. The money, the envelopes, that's from you. Bruce didn't confirm or deny. He just looked at Monkey with those sharp, steady eyes. You're fast, Bruce said. Faster than anyone I've trained. Speed is a gift. Everything else can be taught. But speed is something you're born with. Don't waste it. He stood up, extended his hand, not down to a child, across to an equal. The way he'd extended his hand to Ollie. The way he extended his hand to anyone he respected. Monkey took it. The handshake was firm. Man to man. Teacher to student. Two people who had met on a sidewalk because one of them was kicking a pole badly and the other couldn't walk past it. "Thank you," Monkey said, "for everything. Don't thank me. Show me. Become something." Bruce Lee died on July 20th, 1973, 9 months after their last training session. He was 32 years old. Monkey heard the news from the owner of Yat Lok Restaurant, the same restaurant where Bruce had fed him. The owner told him quietly, between customers, with the matter-of-fact gentleness of a man who had delivered bad news before and understood that the delivery mattered. Monkey didn't react. He walked back to Nathan Road. He found the telephone pole. The same one. The scar on the wood was still there, the pale oval worn smooth from 3 months of bad kicks. He stood in front of it. He set his stance. Weight on the back foot. Hips squared. Guard up. He turned his hip. Let the leg follow. His shin cracked against the wood. Perfect technique. Clean impact. No blood. No swelling. The pole vibrated. Bark fell. He kicked it 7 times. 1 for each day of the week they'd trained. Then he walked home and told his grandmother that the man who had been sending the envelopes was dead. His grandmother, who was 71 years old and had survived the Japanese occupation, the Civil War, and 50 years of selling paper offerings on a sidewalk in Kowloon, said something that Monkey didn't understand until he was much older. "Then you must become the envelope." 47 years later, 2019, Kwang Yao Man was 58 years old. He ran a martial arts school in Kowloon. Not a big one. Not a famous one. A clean room above a pharmacy on Waterloo Road, for blocks from the telephone pole that still stood on Nathan Road, the scar in its bark barely visible now under decades of weather and city grime. He'd been teaching for 30 years. Street kids mostly, the ones who couldn't afford the fancy schools with the polished floors and the branded uniforms. The ones who showed up barefoot and hungry and angry and willing to bleed for something they couldn't name. He taught them the way Bruce had taught him. Basics first. Principles, not patterns. Feed them before you train them. A body without fuel is a machine without purpose. And always, always, the sentence, working hard on the wrong thing doesn't make it right. He charged nothing. His school was funded by his own savings, by donations from former students who had built lives from the foundation he'd given them, and by an envelope that arrived every month from an address in Los Angeles. The return address on the envelope was the Bruce Lee Foundation. It had been arriving for 26 years. The first one came in 1993, 20 years after Bruce's death, with a note from Linda Lee Cadwell, Bruce's widow. The note said Bruce kept a list. People he helped. People he wanted to keep helping. Your name was on it. This is from him. It always was. 26 years of envelopes. From a dead man. Through his widow. To a boy he'd fed in a restaurant and trained in a room above a tailor's shop for 3 months in 1972. In 2019, a documentary filmmaker named Sarah Chun, no relation to the Lee family, tracked down Kwang Yao Man for a project about Bruce Lee's untold legacy. She found him at his school, teaching a 12-year-old girl how to rotate her hip before a kick. The interview lasted 4 hours. Monkey, he still went by Monkey, told the whole story. The pole, the bleeding shins, the man in sunglasses, the restaurant, the napkin with the map, the 3 months of training, the envelopes, the funeral he'd attended alone because he didn't know anyone else who knew Bruce as anything other than a movie star. The documentary aired in 2020. The segment about Monkey was 11 minutes long. It was the most watched portion of the film. The comments section was not filled with arguments or debates. It was filled with one phrase, repeated in dozens of languages. He saw him, because that's what the story was about. Not martial arts. Not celebrity charity. Not a heartwarming tale of a rich man helping a poor child. It was about seeing. Bruce Lee walked down Nathan Road every day. Thousands of people walked that street every day. And every day, they walked past a boy kicking a telephone pole until his legs bled. And nobody stopped. Nobody saw him. Bruce saw him. Not because he was kinder than everyone else. Because he recognized him. Because he'd been that boy. Because 20 years earlier, on the same street, he'd been the one kicking poles and bleeding and burning with a fire that had no direction. And someone had seen him. Yip Man. A teacher who looked at a street kid and decided that what was inside was worth developing. The lesson passed through. From Yip Man to Bruce Lee. From Bruce Lee to Monkey. From Monkey to every barefoot kid who walked into his school on Waterloo Road and found a meal, a teacher, and someone who looked at them and saw not a problem or a project or a charity case, but a person. A person who was working hard on the wrong thing and needed someone to show them the right one. Monkey still trains every morning. He's 58 now. Slower than he was. But the technique is still clean. The hip still turns. The leg still follows. The shin still cracks against the heavy bag in the corner of his school with the precision of something that was built properly and has never broken. On the wall of his school there's a framed napkin, yellowed with age, creased from being folded and unfolded thousands of times. A map drawn in small, precise handwriting. Simple lines. Clear directions. 17 blocks north on Nathan Road. Above a tailor's shop. No sign. Below the napkin, in a frame of its own, are 3 words written in Monkey's handwriting. He saw me. That's the whole story. A man walked down a street. A boy was kicking a pole. The man stopped. Not because he was famous. Not because he was kind. Because he'd been that boy once, and someone had stopped for him, and the only way to repay that debt was to pass it forward. 1 bowl of roast duck. 1 napkin with a map. 3 months of mornings. And a lifetime of envelopes from a man who died before the boy could show him what he'd become. But Bruce knew. That's the thing about teachers. The real ones. They don't need to see the finished product. They see it in the first kick. In the bad technique. In the bleeding shins. In the stubbornness that won't stop even when the body says it should. They see the fire. And they know what it can become. All they have to do is stop walking.